how did Jake play in his first start, and then how do you weigh like if he's good enough to start even if Brady's healthy, or if Afobe is in that mix too? How do you kind of weigh all that?
Yeah, Jake played really well. He graded out really well. Felt that live in game that he was playing well, and then the film confirmed it. So it's a credit to him. And I get it with Central Michigan, it wasn't the national championship, but still to be able to have that maturity and be able to handle that in his first real kind of live offensive game action, was really happy with him, really impressed. And it's a great thing about having depth is that when those guys are back, it's a competition. So it's how has Jake played in games, how has practice look, and Coach Moore always says it. You're going to need 8, 9, 10 guys, and we unfortunately have already proven that some this year. So no, I mean it's very much you got to earn your spot back. It's not just a guarantee that because you were the starter to start the season that you get your spot back.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So how much has Brady been able to do this week, and when do you hope to settle on a starter for right guard spot?
Sure. So obviously Biff said it on Monday, but both those guys are working through. Both Gio and Brady are working through lower body injuries. Brady a little farther ahead than Gio is. We're hopeful that we'll have them both back for this weekend, but just like you guys all kind of know more as the week progresses and that injury report comes out.
Stay on the left with Anthony.
We're 3 game weeks into Evan Link at left tackle. Just your thoughts on his performance thus far and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean always stuff to clean up, but miles ahead of where it was last year, three weeks in, and part of that's just him being more comfortable, trusting himself, playing with confidence, being a little more comfortable on the left side than he was on the right. But I've been happy with how he's played so far. But obviously he's got to continue to improve, just like everyone does week to week. And I feel like you've got a really good third tackle right now, and Blake Frazier is going to continue to push both those guys. So I've been happy with it, but always stuff to improve.
On the right, Charles.
Yeah, it sounds like Sharon spent some extra time in the O-line room last week. What was the purpose of that, and is that something you think will continue going forward?
Yeah, he spent some more time with us on the field. He'll come around, on a normal week and watch O-line Indy. Obviously, that's his baby and what he played, what he coached. So, he'll spend time on a normal week with us. But, his message for the entire team last week was just getting back to the how. So, just to the fundamentals, and we really embraced that in the offensive line room, and just getting back onto the shoots even more than we normally do in a normal week, and focusing on pad level, hand placement. Less about the plays or what the defense is going to do, more just about the stuff we can control.
In the back left, Alejandro.
Grant, how do you evaluate the offensive line's play at Oklahoma, and what lessons can you take from that heading into Nebraska?
Sure. I mean, obviously we didn't play well enough to get the win, so that's the most important thing. And I say that playing is I'm included in that because I'm obviously the one who coaches them. So it's a joint effort, and I thought we protected pretty well overall. Wasn't a bunch of pressure, but didn't run the ball consistently enough. You had a couple of the big explosives, but just didn't consistently provide lanes for the running backs in the way that we need to, the way that we did on this past Saturday. So a lot to improve on. Just got to keep getting better.
On the right here, Tony.
Hey, Grant, last time you guys went into Nebraska, they had the #1 ranked rush D, and then you guys ran for 250. This time around, they got the #1 ranked pass D. I take it that probably doesn't change anything within your game plan.
No, I mean I think Coach Lindsey's gonna obviously you study each opponent and have a lot of respect for Nebraska and the defense they have, and obviously that's been a hallmark of their program for a long time, and rightfully so. I think you have to every week we look at, hey, what do these guys do well? What do they maybe have issues with? And you try to attack that. But at the same time, I think Coach Lindsey's continue to impress on us to just do a great job of just doing what we do. And sometimes you can get caught up in chasing this part of this defense or this, and sometimes you can stray away from what we do best. So I think it's always a balance.
So they've only gotten home for 5 sacks through 3 games, and not against, as you would call them, national champions. What is it that they've done well that's made their pass defense tough?
I think it's a combination of things. I mean, I think obviously they're going to challenge you with man coverage. Having a defense coordinator who's a secondary guy, he's going to have the secondary dialed in, and they no credit to them. They do a really good job. They've got a bunch of experienced players. who started a lot of games and really talented in the back end, and I think they did a great job of going out and getting 2 talented edges who can generate pressure with 4. Even if they haven't gotten home quite as much, they have talented edge rushers. So it'll be a good challenge for us, both in terms of the back end and the pass rush. So we're looking forward to the opportunity.
In the front right here, Aaron.
You mentioned Jake. How do you think your unit did from a physicality perspective against CNU?
Sure, it was much better. Be able to run the ball for 7 yards a carry, whatever it was. It was consistently better, especially with a couple of the 2 longest runs of the day being called back, and that's something obviously we got to improve upon in our room. We can't get that hold on the pin and pull touchdown, in the second half. But overall, it was good. Always stuff to improve. I thought we started a little slow, running the football, but really kind of hit the groove, kind of mid-second quarter, especially in the second half. And especially, I was encouraged that there wasn't any drop-off when the second group and then the third group, and we played every single guy who was dressed in the offensive line. So to be able to consistently move the ball with guys kind of coming in, coming out, was encouraging to see. But we know there's a great challenge in front of us this week, so we got to embrace that opportunity.
In the back, Angelique.
Grant, yesterday Evan was talking about Sharon's message last week was an extra emphasis on being physical. How do you coach them? You don't say just be more physical. Like, what do you do to get them to do that?
Sure. I mean, I think it starts in practice, as it always does. Just making sure our pad level's good, our hand placement's good, that we're finishing through the echo of the whistle in practice, because it's obviously, as you guys all know, it's not the type of thing you can just turn on in game. You have to practice that. You have to develop those habits. Like I said, just getting back and spending. We always spend time in the shoots every week, but spending extra time. Last week I think we were in shoots every single day. We'll do it again this week. Just getting back to kind of the basics and less concerned about necessarily the specific looks, and more just about us and our fundamentals, our finish, pad level, all those things.
And years ago, I talked to Steve Hutchinson about shoots, and he talked about why that was so important. I mean, what is it about that makes it so?
I love the shoots. It's kind of the genesis or the origin of everything we do up front, just because it focuses so much on your pad level and firing out as opposed to standing up. And when you can come out with a flat back and low pad level and play with tight hands, good things tend to happen. And obviously defenses do a good job of moving and stunting and blitzing to try to get you, off of those kind of one-on-one blocks or off those combination blocks. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to move men to generate a rushing attack. And obviously we have a stable of talented backs, so if we give them space, we get them up to a second or third level player. They'll make a miss, they'll take care of the rest, but we got to do our job and open up those holes. So it all starts with pad level.
On the right here, Zach.
How much in like a hostile environment like Nebraska does a guy like Greg Crippen, have flexibility to kind of dictate what the O-line does, and how does he communicate too with Bryce?
Sure. So I mean, he's the quarterback of the offensive line, and we put a ton on the center in this offense, just as we have for years and years. And he does a great job of kind of being the commander up there and getting everything set, making sure we're locked in, and everyone's got the calls. But you said it's a great opportunity this week. Much like Oklahoma, Nebraska's their fans do a great job. It's a tough place to play. So again, we've got to do a great job in practice of preparing for that, and then embracing that opportunity, embracing that challenge on the road, because just like in the last 3 or 4 times we've played there, they're gonna make it tough.
Anthony.
Bryce being able to run the football, how does that help you guys with maybe some of the math in the box?
Sure. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's a math equation. All of a sudden now, if you either can get the running back out wide and you pull a hat out that way, or you get the running back as an extra blocker. Either way, you're starting to square up your numbers. We're now we're playing with 10. They still have 11, but we have 10 instead of 9, or 8 instead of 7. How many blockers you have in the scheme? I also think Bryce did a heck of a job of just extending plays. I guess kind of funny part, however you want to look at it, of that was, I think of those rushes, I think one of them was a called run. The rest were him just kind of making plays, and the stuff we had seen since spring, stuff we had seen since since fall camp. Obviously he's a dynamic athlete as well as a great quarterback, so he's got that ability to, if he doesn't like it, take off, and I'd imagine it makes it tough for a defense, because you got to account for that when you're in your coverages, and got to have responsibility for the quarterback.
Stay on the left there, Ryan.
Going back to Jake really quick, I mean, it's not like he was a highly ranked recruit. I guess, what did you identify in him to kind of see this potential this early on in his career?
Sure. I have to give Coach Moore credit, because he was the one who who Jake committed to out of high school, but it's I think there's a kind of a misconception sometimes in the recruiting services and the ratings, and I know I have for as long as I've been a position coach. I know Coach Moore has. I know, all of us feel strongly that you got to watch the tape. A lot of times the rankings match up with what you see on tape, but there's plenty of times where a guy's rated really high and you don't see it. In our personal opinion, there's a lot of times where a guy may be underrated, so to speak, like Jake was, and you turn on the tape and you see those traits, you see the characteristics, both in terms of their physical traits, physical abilities, how they play, but also the kind of intangible things, how they finish, how their body language is between plays, all those things that can kind of start to tell you or give you an indication of how they're going to be, and then that's obviously before you start being able to talk to them and you'll get a sense for how their personality is, how do they learn, what does their high school coach say about them, what do people in the school say about them, all those kind of things that can give you an indicator of how this person's going to be. And Jake, to his credit, even last year, you got a sense that he was going to be ready sooner rather than later, and he had a good training camp this fall, and we felt immediately going into the season that we could put him in and feel really good about it. So I'm happy for him that he's gotten that opportunity, and excited for him to continue to do that.
Biff was telling us on Monday about a story about him and Jim blocking a dress or demonstrating the blocks on the dresser. Do you have any stories of blocking inanimate objects in your career?
I mean, I don't know if any good ones. There was a period where Coach Harbaugh became very obsessed with pass setting and liked to pass set down the hallways. But you've been here 11 years, like I have. It's a lot of technique demonstration that goes on, and that's part of what you love about the job is we get to coach football. It's hard not to love it.
On the right here, Austin.
Grant, there's a lot of offensive line expertise on the staff with you and Sharon and Juan Castillo. How do you balance the value of having a bunch of different perspectives with not having too many voices to the point that it gets overwhelming?
Sure. I think it's a great question, and I think it's there's kind of two ways to look at it, and is it the one way would be like, all right, hey, we have to do it my way. It's got to be only my voice. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. Whereas I take the other view of why not use the resources. Now, obviously, with Coach Moore, he's what I learned under. So there's a ton of similarities in talent in terms of how we teach the language. It's all the same. So and then bringing in a guy like Juan, who has an immense amount of experience. Not only in college, but obviously decades in the NFL. There's a lot of carryover anyway, but it's a great resource for our guys. It's a great resource for me to be able to say, hey, what do you think about this? Or hey, how do you like to coach this technique? So instead of viewing it as a threat or a challenge, I like to think of it as a great opportunity for our players, great opportunity for me to be able to have an incredible resource on our staff. And then I think, to answer your original question, just comes down to making sure that I may say something differently, in terms of the specifics than Coach Moore would, or Juan would, or Coach Gilbert or Coach Marukian, who are two other great offensive line analysts. But we're all saying the same common message, and I think that's a great thing. We've all had teachers in school where two teachers can say the same thing, and they're saying the same general principle, or they're saying the same information, but you may learn better from this person, or you may like how that person explains it better than this person. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other. It just means that just the phrasing slightly different. So no, I think it's an awesome attribute for our guys, and it's a great help for us.
Got time for a few more. Start with Aaron on the right.
How do you think Nate Afobe's handled the move to left guard since Gio's injury, and has he earned another start, I think, this week?
Sure. So we worked all those guys. Nate, Brady, Jake, Lawrence, we worked them at both left and right guard all throughout spring, all throughout camp, in part for this reason, so that if guys goes down, it's not the first time they've ever taken a snap at left. So he had repped even throughout that week, the Oklahoma week at left guard. So, I think there is some of the misconception that it's just changing, which foot is up. It is different, especially at tackle, playing on the left versus playing on the right. But that's where it just comes down to trying to have preparation of make sure those guys have gotten those reps so that it's not brand new to them. And it goes back to what I said earlier about Jake. Nate went out and played pretty well, against Central Michigan, and he's got to continue to have a good week of practice. He had a good practice yesterday, and if he does that, then he'll be the starter. If Brady's back and Brady's playing better than Nate, then Brady will be the starter. It's every week it's that open competition of who are the best 5 guys going to be there going to help us go win.
Anything else? Okay, Alejandro?
In retrospect and getting him back, how important is Marlon Klein to your run game?
He's huge. I mean, I have to give a shout out to Coach Casul and the tight ends. They do an unbelievable job. It's a center point of our offense, not just throwing the ball, but being able to have tight ends who can block and block not just at an okay level or they can maybe cut off a C gap every now and again, but where we feel like, hey, most weeks we're going to like our matchup and we're going to feel like we have an advantage here, putting a tight end who can also go run whatever Marlon would run and catch seams and wheel routes and do all the things our tight ends do a great job of in the passing game, but at the same time go not just be okay or not just hold up at the point of attack, but go dominate the point of attack. So Coach Casula does a great job of getting those guys ready, and the tight ends have a great mindset of they consider themselves an extension of the offensive line in the run game. They really take a lot of pride in that, and I think it shows up, and it helps us because all of a sudden teams have to defend multiple different things when you have tight ends attached to the core.
Last question, Ryan.
I'm just during practice, is there any coach louder than him during practice?
He's a very enthusiastic guy. He's very enthusiastic, very energetic. But like I said, it's been awesome to have him, and obviously have Coach Marukian back, back from Charlotte, where he was with Coach Biff for the last couple of years, as well as Coach Gilbert, who's been on staff the last couple of years. Again, I'm very, very fortunate to have the amount of O-line knowledge we have in the building, and especially coaching a position where every single player going to have 5, or as you guys see for us, sometimes 6 or 7 guys in the field at the same time. It's a huge help because I may see something with Link that I want to go hit with him, but all of a sudden now Juan or John or Nick can hit something that happened with Sprague or Phoebe, or it just again, I view it as a complete positive for us that we have 5 guys in our room in our building, who have been Division I offensive line coaches.